By November of 1880, it was already over. The armor had been torn apart by police fire. The gang was gone. And the man who had walked through gunfire at Glenrowan now sat in a narrow stone cell inside Old Melbourne Gaol. Ned Kelly was 25 years old. The trial had been swift. The sentence had been clear. Death by hanging. Outside the prison walls, the colony was dividing itself in two. For some, Kelly was a murderer, a man who had ambushed police officers, terrorized the countryside, and deserved everything coming to him. But for others, he had become something more dangerous than a criminal. He had become a symbol, a man who had stood up against a system that many Irish settlers believed was designed to grind them down. Petitions spread across Victoria. Thousands of signatures. Ordinary people demanding the government spare his life. More than 30,000 names on paper that would ultimately change nothing. Because the colonial government wasn't afraid of Kelly's crimes anymore. They were afraid of his legend. Grant him mercy, and the outlaw lives forever in the public imagination. Untouchable. Immortal. They couldn't allow that. And so the date remained fixed. November 11th, 1880. Inside the prison. The final days passed. Visitors came and went. Priests, officials, men who wanted to witness history and would later argue about what they saw. Some accounts say Kelly was calm. Others describe anger, frustration, a man raging against the walls closing in. The truth is harder to reach than most people admit. Prison records from that era are thin, and memory, especially memory attached to a legend, has a way of reshaping itself into something more dramatic than the original moment ever was. What we know for certain is this. Kelly understood exactly what was coming. The morning of the execution arrived before dawn. The gallows had been prepared inside the prison walls. Witnesses gathered. Officials confirmed the identity of the condemned. The rope was tested. The trapdoor inspected. Kelly was brought from his cell. What happened next has been argued over for more than a century. Some witnesses described him as composed. Others remembered defiance, a hard look, a set jaw. But when the moment finally came, 3 words entered the historical record. 3 words that may, or may not, have actually been spoken. Such is life. Short, quiet, almost philosophical. For a man standing at the edge of everything. Whether Kelly truly said them, no one can say with certainty. Some historians believe the account is accurate. Others suspect the phrase was added later, smoothed into shape by people who wanted the ending to feel inevitable. But here is the thing about legends. Uncertainty doesn't weaken them. It feeds them. Because a phrase that feels true outlasts any fact that contradicts it. The trapdoor opened. The execution was carried out, and the rebellion that had shaken colonial Victoria finally ended. Or so the authorities believed. Because once a man dies, the arguments about him grow louder, not quieter. His supporters remembered a rebel, a man who had looked at an unjust system and refused to bow to it. His critics remembered a killer, a man who had chosen violence and dragged others down with him. Both versions survived. Both versions still survive today, and both of them kept feeding the legend. The armor from Glenrowan was preserved behind glass. The Geraldary letter was studied in universities, and the story of the boy from the bush, who put on iron and walked into gunfire, never stopped growing. Not in courtrooms, not in police reports, but in memory, in the arguments people still have about what he was and what he meant. Because history records what happened, but legends grow in the space between the facts and what people need to believe. And that is where Ned Kelly still lives. The story doesn't end here. Every week, another chapter, another moment, another name history couldn't forget. Subscribe and see who becomes a legend next.